Greetings. Okay, I'm going to start with some sound. Greetings. Thank you for being here. So, today is going to be another fun video. So, I want to start with some magic because it's super cool. Crystal, pure white crystal. Let's see. Well, I should have brought some with me. I guess I could pause. I'm going to pause real quick. Crystals like this. Okay. So I had seen a video probably about a year ago where somebody had crystals and they rubbed them together and this light showed up. And so I grabbed all my crystals and I'm rubbing them together and it didn't seem to work. So the other day, it was still dark out and one of my crystals hit one of my other crystals and made a light. And I was like, wait a second. Did that just happen? So I hit them together again. I wonder if you can even see it. I wonder if you were to watch this in the dark. And it lit up and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so cool. So I started rubbing them together and they do light up. And so, obviously it's bright out right now. I will try to create a video to post on YouTube to show you how it works. But it's basically the rougher sides need to be rubbing together and slight little tiny pieces of crystal do end up flaking off. And so, also, there's negative and positive ions inside the crystals. And so when you rub them together, you actually create like a battery. So I wanted to share that with you guys because it's real. Magic is real. The crystals and their energy that they hold are also real. Super awesome. And then moving into the Divine Feminine, I'm also going to talk about the 9-day calendar and the Julian calendar. And the Jewish calendar. Okay. So I'm going out on a limb here because actually it feels quite uncomfortable, and I think that this is the whole point of part of the spell, so to speak, is to bring uncomfortability around this, making it seem kind of taboo. But in the idea of repatterning and dismantling patriarchy and putting women or putting the female into her proper authority. If from my lifetime to many lifetimes ago, as far as what they tell us in his story, her story doesn't hold the authority. So in academia, in medicine, in even roles that are perceived as authoritarian, say like the police department or the fire department or even like construction and road work. These are predominantly filled by males in this, human realm. And what I've seen in researching history and rediscovering the goddess and rediscovering the self and what we call feminism or feminists, and that's a whole, I'm pro-women. Feminism, anyways, I'm pro-women. and uplifting the authority of women and centering women. We've been saying, well, the dialogue has been to recenter, decenter men, recenter self, and the female. There's so much in this. Okay. Recentering the female human. How would we do that? How would that actually look? Because it seems to me that a lot of the recentering is still perceived through a patriarchal system. If that makes sense. I know that what I mean is, because the system is so patriarchal that even when, say, myself as a female am working against patriarchy, so to speak, or wanting to recenter women or focus on upliftment of women and the authority of women, there is a pushback even with the self because of the indoctrination of patriarchy. Because what I'm going to say is refocusing on, so it would be recentering the Yoni. It would be Yoni focused, and then go on from there. Yoni focused, moon educated, and then when it comes to the menstrual cycle and the name, men. Oh my gosh, I talk about spells and the spells that are upon us, and how without even telling us the spell, we kind of indoctrinate ourselves into the spell. So this whole time, right, decoding the Bible and refocusing on the female and the sistren and the prophetesses that are mentioned in the what I call Civil Bible. This one, was it written? I think it was. The Great Mothers definitely participated in that, in those writings, in that message. And I'm like overexcited. In that is the absence of the feminine. Yet we talk about words and spelling. And so the word men, as I've talked about in this, it's in the Women's Encyclopedia of Myths and Secrets. There are other, it's in the Great Cosmic Mother. There are other books that go into detail about females, the divine female, the divine feminine aspect, and the powers that she possesses. And so, if we menstrual cycle, men comes from the female, the original mother. She was men. And in the Bible, it says the daughters of men. The daughters of men, meaning men would be the female. Then the men would be, or what we call men, or what we call males, are the womb men. Men meaning wombless. Coming from the womb. Those are the true womb men. What we have been calling women or woman. Oh my gosh, I'm looking at all these books. Women. Wouldn't the true word be men? Wouldn't what we call women, me, like somebody with a womb, wouldn't we technically be men? So this brings me back to the God in the Bible. Because if the God in the Bible is female, and you would take a piece of her chromosomes or a rib of the two X's of what we've been told, because most of the information we get are from a patriarchal system of teaching. And I've said before, like, how do we know the information we're getting is for sure? Yet, if we go off of the information and it is correct, the rib would have been a piece of the X chromosome to create the Y chromosome. But you take the language and you take everything and you turn it upside down, and we continue the spell by the wording. So with that said, focus on the Yoni and remember that it's man. I'm a man. It feels so weird to say that, but that would be the true way to correct this spell. Would it not be? It does. It feels right. It feels empowering is the best way to say it. It feels empowering to say, I'm a man. It's like my DNA is like, yeah. Instead of saying, I'm a woman. A little different. Yet, because of the conditioning and everything, I feel like this is kind of radical thinking or radical suggestions or radical, it's kind of like grand risings over good morning. We recognize the spelling and then we change the spell. We change it. We change the dialogue. So we would incorporate the Yoni, checking in with the womb, with the uterus, checking in with our own connection to the body. And interestingly, certain sounds, like higher pitches, connect to the womb, and the mind connects to the womb of the female. In the male body, his erection, schmection, I don't know what's allowed on YouTube now. It's like everything is so weird. But anyhow, is controlled by his heart. So I feel like Great Mother created, when she employed, or not employed, but maybe employed, the genetics of the male, that was kind of the hint. The heart connects to his organ, so to speak, and for her mind connects to her organ, so to speak. And then that's the other thing. We call our organs, and then when you go, there's a piano called an organ. Do we not? Are these are, and at this point, I feel like everything is always telling us, okay, so with that, it's a purposeful discussion and connection to the Yoni, to the womb. And for those who have had a hysterectomy, there is still, the DNA is still within the body, and there is still a cave within the body to connect with. Some people still have certain organs from, like, the fallopian tubes or eggs, and can connect through that, because I was shown a long time ago that we're still connected to the parts of our bodies that are removed from us. And I really think that anyways, the medical system. Okay, so that's most of it. Where would I change the dialogue? Where are you guys? Where are you all with that connection to spelling and what we've learned? Because menses, men is in the beginning. Month comes from menses. Mother and month have a similar sound. The moon is connected to this. Calendar is literally, the meaning of it means knowledge of the menses. It's an old Roman word. So with that, we're going to move into the calendar. But these are knowings shown to us with, it seems to me like the greater mindset. We've become so accustomed to the words and to the language and to the flow of the sounds that we make and the way that we speak, when we might have spoken more like this in another time and place where it was easier to connect with when we use certain tones. I don't know, but I would assume so, because it hasn't always been like this. We know this. And I find that a challenge for my own self, especially being in menopause. Menopause? I mean, what the heck, fire? Where, right? I mean, it's just, it's really interesting, because these are just extra links to me that make me think this is part of all that is being manipulated so that we stay in a certain control, is the best way to say it, and cognitive dissonance. Because if we teach the world that the creator is male, wouldn't that be the first beginning of cognitive dissonance? Because nature shows us otherwise. Nature shows us otherwise. Okay. Speaking of nature, so some things that came to my mind and noticed during the celestial event, otherwise called the eclipse. Because, was it an eclipse? Well, the dictionary does, or the Thesaurus dictionary does say that it is a celestial event. So, okay. Interestingly enough, I do talk about if you see it in nature, then it exists. Well, some curious things. The moon, so we are told that the earth rotates, it spins. Well, the moon looks like it doesn't. We always see the kind of like the same rabbit. I think does it go like this though? Does the moon move? Does the moon rotate? And the sun, isn't it? I don't know. From what they tell us. But even from looking at it, which is hard to do sometimes, first of all, there looks like there's something going on with the sun. Like it's a different sun. I don't know. It's different. It's just different. And then, I think there's more than one sun. Not I think. The information I remember is there are at least two suns that we are under. But I theorize that there are three suns, two of which we often see, and one I call the black sun, which is behind the two other suns. I don't know. Who knows? Okay. The calendar. I don't know what that was, what happened, but a lot of people, it's so many interesting things about that day. Now, I had done a video before talking about, oh my gosh, it's kind of unfair. This is why I think we're indoctrinated in the school that we're taught. Because, listen, if you want to study the calendar and the moon and the stars and the sun, oh my gosh, in even the available information right now, like the popular, not popular, but the well-known astrology, like tropical astrology, people have been doing that for years. So then if you wanted to step outside of that very common astrology and start looking at the moon and the Julian calendar and then possibly even the Jewish calendar or any of the many calendars that have existed, I mean, I don't see myself ever being completely caught up with this, because I learned some more information about the Julian calendar this morning. Because the Julian calendar is based on the sun, and it was borrowed from the Egyptians. It also changes each year. This is why I mentioned before in one of my other videos where I had seen that it was 9 days, then it was 10 days, and now it's 13 days. Well, in 2100, it will be 14 days behind. So as we move through the Gregorian calendar, we lose a certain amount of time with the Julian calendar. The Julian calendar is 13 days in the past. Who still uses the Julian calendar? Certain Orthodox religions. And let's see. Certain Orthodox religions, and where did I? Oh, it's right here. Let me see. And somebody else. Let's see here. Okay. It's very. The other thing is, for example, so if you go to look at how to read the Julian date, it goes by the year, which would be 2024, and then what day we're on. Well, if you go by the Gregorian calendar, we're on the 119th day of the year. If you go by the Julian calendar, which goes from noon to noon, it doesn't go from midnight to midnight, which goes back to the moon calendar. So isn't that interesting? Because though it's a sun calendar, it goes back to how we switched, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. So AM is called anti-meridian. Meridian is named for Mary Diana, the goddesses. Anti-meridian, are they telling us? They're telling us. Then we have post-meridian, which is after 12 noon. In certain places, especially if you go to I think back east and or old-timey places where they still have the historic post office or the historic library, Tartaria, just kidding. You'll see just M. It would say open from 8 a.m. to 12 m. 12 meridian, meaning the middle of the day when we used to start. And then you would say opens again at 1 p.m. post meridian. So are they also telling us this is the world post Mary Diana, post the goddess? Oh my gosh, there's so many things, y'all. There's so many things. Okay, so this is how the Julian calendar works. And then when I started doing the Julian calendar, I don't know how many months ago that was. Was it just this year? It may not have been. I feel like it hasn't been that long. Now when I went to go look it up, there's things like astronomers to look at the Julian calendar. The U.S. government, NASA, has a Julian calendar. What? Those weren't there before. At least they weren't. I wonder if people are like, wait, what's going on in the calendar? And so these other options have been popping up. And then, yeah. A Julian date is a count of the number of days that have elapsed since noon on January 1st. So that's why today, so I think I skipped that. So today on the Julian calendar, it's day 117. Although today, it's probably now, let's look. It'll probably say 118 because it's starting at noon. Let's see, because that was this morning that I looked at that. Well, and that's my time. Oh my gosh, and that's the other thing. Oh my goodness sakies. Let's see. Julian calendar, let's see. Oh, this is a photograph. Okay. Julian calendar 2024. Yeah, this one says, the first one that comes up, U.S. Forest Service. That didn't come up before when I was looking. The Forest Service, California Department of Food and Agriculture. Y'all, these weren't here before. Anywho, let's find out what today is. I'm going to pause it so that... Okay. I don't know what happened. What? Look, I took pictures from this morning. Now it says the 119th, which it is, the 119th day. But this morning, so if you ever want to know what day it is in the year, you look up what the Julian calendar is, because even though they say the calendar is 13 days backwards, which is all the more confusing, it will tell you what day it is by noontime. But this morning, I took it. Let's see. Is it still in here? Okay. Stuff like that happens to me all the time. Just saying. No. Here it is. Oh. That's because it was the wrong date. It said today's date is April 26th. So they hadn't even caught it up yet. Never mind. But the details say it's taken April 28th. I took this picture today. So I don't know what's going on with the Julian calendar. It just makes it all that more confusing. And with Google. But, so, I said all that. It's just, I mean, oh, and I was going to tell you who else uses it. Okay, also, we are going to go into the 9-day calendar. And that's a whole, I mean, there's something to all of this. Because as I showed in one of the other videos, there is a pattern. And I tried to slow down the video. And then I posted pictures. And so I'm going to go into a slower, greater description of the 9-day calendar. But I also want to see who else uses the Gregorian. Okay, here we go. Nearly all Eastern Orthodox churches use the Julian calendar to establish the dates of movable feasts, such as Easter. This is why Easter was kind of different this year. Who controls, who just... And we have calendars that tell us like years in advance. So if calendar is named after men and studying the menses, which women have, which we now call women. Do you see the language and what it is doing to my brain? And probably y'all's brain as I talk about this stuff. Okay, so our calendar, the 9 days, and the pattern. Now, let's see here. Okay, it's hard to see because of the camera, but this is March. And what I'm hoping that you can see is, see how like on the 20th, it says Mars. And then on the 14th, which was a week and a day before, says Mars on the bottom. So the top planet is, if you go by the new moon being the very first day of the new month, and I call that first day Earth Day, because my theory is that we didn't worship we noticed them, we used them to guide us, but we didn't worship the moon. We didn't worship anything outside of. We didn't worship anything, but we honored and we studied the earth first, because that's where we were. So that's my theory. That's where I started. And if we go by tropical astrology, there are 9 planets. So and we use 7 of those planets, 5 of those planets and 2 celestial beings as the name of our week already. So this is my way of just kind of showing how certain things coincide with the Gregorian calendar, but also to show how the feminine aspect, in my theory, and from what has been remembered for me, and then there are also certain books and such that affirm 93699 is the number. Remember in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, number 9? Remember that? Why are they saying that? No, you think that was odd? I think those are hints. I'm convinced. Oh my gosh. Okay. This has already been pretty long. Okay. So, let me see. Yeah, let me see where else. And then the bottom is if I start the month the first day after the new moon. However many days it is. Sometimes it's 1 to 2 days and sometimes it's 3 days. And why do I say that? Because that's what it looks like. And then there are ancient stories about like the Ides, but I theorize that we had technology back then that we may have been told we didn't have. Okay, so you see like Mars, Jupiter. Is that Jupiter? Yeah, Jupiter. And then let's see over here. I thought I had a Pluto. I do. So then we have Pluto up here, and then Pluto down here. So they're just 1 day apart. And then that's what I started noticing is like the days start being like Earth. Where did it go? Pluto. You see how they're like, and this is the 7-day calendar, right? That I'm writing on. So we can still see that like a week and a day before is Pluto Day. A week and a day before was Mars Day. And I found that kind of interesting. And as I kept going, so coming in April, yeah, like Mercury. It does it again. Only this time the days are right on top of each other. So this is, we're in April. So look, we have Earth and Earth. Neptune. I was like, wait a second. This really kind of messed with my head. Because I was like, wait a minute. If I'm starting these 2 to 3 days apart, depending on which one, where you would see that maybe it would be 2 to 3 days apart in the mismatch. But sometimes there's 3 whole days out. That was this month. I call them days out of time on the 9-day original calendar that I started. That starts the first day of the new moon. And then we start the first day at the end of the new moon, and we still have this pattern. And then you bring in the Gregorian calendar, and then the Jewish calendar is the oldest calendar still in use, and it goes by days, and it's something like 3,000 something today. And gosh, studying that, it makes me very intimidated. So, I wanted to explain. Oh, and then so today on the 9-day calendar is Sunday, the 28th for the Gregorian calendar. And then we would have Mars energy from the beginning of the new moon, or we would have Mercury energy starting at the end of the new moon. And we could combine that. I mean, at this point, I'm starting to overstand and understand that this is probably more along the lines of what is actually being used. All the energies, all the calendars. So if you have, they talk about like billionaires use astrologists. Well, do they use all the astrology? I think they would. Especially if like the Orthodox Catholicism is dictating certain days ahead of time by the Julian calendar. Wouldn't you want to also be aware of that calendar? You wouldn't just be going off of tropical astrology. And then with the Julian calendar, we wouldn't be in Taurus yet. We would still be in Aries. Would that still fit? So we would have Mars energy, Mercury energy, and Sun energy, which sounds like a powerful, whether you are entering into, especially now with Mercury, I think Mercury is still in retrograde. That's probably somewhere on here too. Is Mercury in retrograde? Is it true? I don't know. Right? Who knows? I think if we put all of these together, we figure, I think if I put all of this together, someday it will all make sense. But yeah, Mercury communication, and also there's magic in Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to us. I've mentioned before that I theorize that you can send messages to Mercury, to either the other planets or to your ancestors, or however you want to communicate through to possible deities, through Mercury, the messenger. And then also Mars, who has been going through like a transformational remembrance, because at one point Mars was also recognized as a feminine female energy and had tons of life and water and has that energy still within it. So though we call it the warring planet, it's more along the lines of that planet was part of a war, and those remembrances or those healings are coming through. And then we have the sun for the Gregorian calendar, and the sun just brings in some warmth and I would say knowledge. Oh my gosh, all of that. These always are far longer than I wanted them to be. Okay, so also, so some remembrances, because this is pretty interesting. Some remembrances were that the females, because of their incredible creation power, were able to move the stars and the moon and literally move planets or move celestial things. And also, I had done a video quite a while back ago where I talked about, I might not have kept it up, but talked about the butterfly effect and Gen X and the idea of memories, and trying, and that certain things like the shorts, TikTok, certain technology, that specifically the cell phone, which is kind of eliminated the need to memorize certain things or learn how to memorize certain things. And that memory, it's interesting because memory is what connects us to our stories, our lineages, our knowings, our DNA, so to speak, our codes. And if you shorten or you're able to remove certain memories, then that is kind of, it's almost like we've seen it with people who tend to lose their memory, or if we're in a situation where somebody doesn't remember something the way that we do. Now, everyone's perception is going to be a little different. However, memories are still important, and memorizing certain things are important. Well, there are two movies that I recently watched where a girl, these were on, I think Disney, and they are, Disney movies. And one is The Wish, where she's literally able to pull a star from the sky. What? And then the other one is Disenchanted, where the most powerful magic is memory. Okay, at this point, I'm pretty convinced that they tell us stuff in every movie. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's a sitcom. I don't care if it's a movie. I don't care what language it's in. I've been watching just a basic kind of like not sitcom, but like series, and they are constantly showing Tartaria. Start looking at old movies and old videos. You will see that most of them are filmed either near, in, or around an ancient building that we are now recognizing as part of possibly Tartaria, or what at the timeline of when Tartaria was still on the map. Okay, then we talk about just some side note things like the Cathars. If you don't know about the Cathars, you can do a little investigating on YouTube and elsewhere. But the Cathars were a group of pre-Christian, anti the patriarchal type of church that we have now, that were basically genocided. But what I find interesting is in the depictions it talks about how these people were genocided and removed from their castles. And then we call certain churches cathedrals, which starts with Cathar. So, okay. And then, all right. Okay. Now we're going to move into some more words, because as I was, and then both of those movies talk about elements and being elemental and what we're actually capable of. Like what we're capable of magic. Why are they always showing magic? Because it exists. Okay. And how that magic might work. For example, this is kind of a side note thing, but these are things this is kind of like centering the Yoni, or centering intuition. Yesterday, I decided, because one of my friends who I follow and also chat with, and many people talk about growing your own food. And there's food around here, and I figured out the foraging, but also there's some food, it would be nice not to have to buy it. So I got some arugula. I love arugula. And decided I needed to plant it yesterday. Well, I didn't get a almanac for this year. I need to get one. If you don't have one, I suggest getting one, because it's very interesting, because I feel like it's a great way to kind of double check intuition, because you might find, for example, that there was only like kale, which I did consider, and one other one that was good for planting from now until May. But most other things are not good for planting until May. But I decided, I was like, let's just see if my intuition, because I have noticed throughout my life that I would plant things or do things according to quote unquote astrology without knowing what was happening with astrology. And this is, to me, where the female intuition and the knowingness of, like I said, the prophetesses show up. Because if you're not out there checking in with the stars, you may be connected anyways with the planet, and the planet's encouraging you, like, hey, guess what? It might be a good time to plant some arugula. I was kind of floored, but I want to share that with you all. Now, in regards to the Cathars and memories and the movies and just learning the stuff, I looked up the word entertainment. Did you know tainment is its own separate word? Do you want to know what it means? It means an activity designed to give pleasure, enjoyment, diversion, amusement, or relaxation to an audience, no matter whether the audience, meaning it doesn't matter who the audience is. This is just tainment. Now we're going to talk about the word enter. Tainment, denoting material created in part to entertain while also serving another purpose. Now we talked about the word enter. So you enter into a contract, you enter into a deal. So entertainment is actually a form of a contract. Speaking of magic, and literally says, while also serving another purpose or attainment, a diversion. Okay, they're literally telling us. And then I wanted to clarify some things. In one of my videos in the witches and Sibyls and Witches video from like 4 years ago, I talk about the word pagan and pagan. And I say that because of dialogue and because of where language originated from. There are still discoveries being found about where language came from. And if you look at the American English language before the Spanish and such, peoples didn't call themselves by the names that, like, okay. When I said that in that video, let's just focus on that specific word and that and what I was saying. I could be wrong. If I'm wrong, I apologize. That was not my intention. What I was saying is that in our culture, and especially when it comes to the patriarchal religion, pagan was applied also to the indigenous people of the Americas. And there is a group called the pagan, and it would have made it like pagan, yes, is an old word, but do we know? We're just learning like the Americas are the old world. So I'm linking that. I am. It's a link. It may not be. To me, there seems to be, I find it coincidental that we have that name for an indigenous group, and we also have this description of people who don't worship like Christians and then are called pagans, and then the description that is given can match a lot of indigenous groups all around the world. Therefore, I find it interesting. I do not mean to link the two names together for those who were upset about that or found it disrespectful. That was not my intention. I'm looking at the English language and how it can muddle through many eras because it's been around for a long time, and its purpose is to, what I theorize, is to perpetuate a spell without having to do the magic on a continual level. So, if anything, we're learning that what we've been taught isn't always correct and it can be backwards. And then I kind of want to end with bringing it back to, oh yeah, it's an Algonquin language from what I looked up. Bring it back to the Great Mother, and Yoni focus is to come back to the word parthenogenesis, because I don't think Charlotte, the California stingray, has had her babies yet. And this information was really coming out during the time of the celestial event. And the message I got was that the celestial event was literally ushering in the energy of Mother. great mother. We're going to see what I'm speaking about without it coming from specifically, like just like the 4B movement. It's just going to happen. Women are going to start recognizing, like, hey, the way that we focus on our womb isn't in a way that's like healthy and knowledgeable. Like, it's changing. A lot of those things have changed over the past few years, as far as younger females understanding their moon cycles and really getting together with other sisters and helping to nurture each other and learn through that. My generation, and even today, like I was saying, it's like taboo and uncomfortable, but it is a remembrance of the power of the womb. And with parthenogenesis, the description for Charlotte, the California stingray, they say parthenogenesis happens when the species needs to continue. And I look at it as we are remembering what we're capable of, and the planet is reverberating back to the world, like the power of females, the power of the feminine. And I'm saying female because this includes all female species on this planet, because all female species on this planet hold authority other than the human female. If you look at nature, all the females hold the authority in the species. So let's bring that back. Let's bring that back to the humans, and we do that by recentering the womb, the feminine, and the language. Okay. I feel like that was a lot. Thanks for listening. This is a little different, a little more detailed, especially with the calendar. On my Patreon, thank you everyone on my Patreon. Thank you for everyone who's subscribed and supported. On my Patreon, there will be some more information, actually a share of singing bowls and some information that will be accessible to everyone, no matter whether you're paying for the Patreon or not, or supporting through that way. If you are interested, there are classes on the Patreon as far as helping to repattern certain self patterns, and also be able to see the outward world patterns, as well as bringing in elemental exchanges and gifts of the self to share with the world, or not, just for yourself. All right, little singing bowls before we part. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for being here. Until next time, take care.